Good evening and welcome to Skinner Road School. In honor of you being here, as well as in honor of Memorial Day, our second, third, and fourth grade students have a little treat for you. And they also brought a little gift that they'll give you after they're done singing that was made for you by the first graders who worked very hard. And their teacher told me as I was walking in here that they so wanted to color their stars in yellow, but they held off just for Memorial Day for you. So enjoy. One quick thing, if you need bathrooms, they're out that way, and the exits are in the front and in the back of the building. So enjoy.
You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true for the red, white, and blue, ere there's ever a post or brag. Should all acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. The flag of America forever. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. The flag of America forever. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray!
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. That was terrific. We really appreciate it. It's a great way to start off our meeting.
I'll take one. Here, we'll take one. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, you guys. Well, now we'll get down to business, and yes, so please rise for the pledge. Hello again. Now we will start with item 1.0 or 2.0, awards, recognition, and presentations. 2.1, recognition of Northeast School of Distinction Award. Dr. Conley.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. Members of the board, in your folders this evening, you have a copy of the program from the Schools of Distinction breakfast that we attended a week or so ago. Mrs. Green, who is here this evening to receive an award from the board, is there. You can see that she was one of 4 speakers out of all the schools who were there. She started off by saying that she's not much of a public speaker, and of course entertained everyone quite well for the duration of her speech, and talked very warmly and genuinely about Northeast School and the Northeast School family that has been doing the hard work there. So we do have a recognition award for Northeast School. It's the only school who was labeled as a school of distinction in Vernon. Again, we were quite thrilled to be one of many, many schools that were there, but one of the 4 who were asked to speak. And for Northeast School, their category was highest progress, so they came quite far. And I think, Mrs. Green, you brought your grade level with the highest progress with you, your teachers, that's Ms. Halverson. Ms. Pelletier, okay, thank you. So if you would come forward, please, Mrs. Fisher will present that award. Mrs. Halverson.
Congratulations. I'm very proud of you. Thank you for all your hard work, both of you. And this is on to item 3.0, the consent agenda. 3.1. Does anyone want to make a motion on our consent agenda? Mrs. Bush.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Mr. Polina? Would anyone like to pull it? Mrs. Arndt?
Item B, please.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll vote on A, C, D, E, and F. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, now for item B, Mrs. Arndt?
If you check page 7 of those minutes where we were discussing open choice. Actually, I'm sorry, on page 8, it records that Mrs. Arndt voted in favor and then Mrs. Arndt voted opposed.
Okay. So what did you vote? Do you remember?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything on that meeting? I have one other thing. It's on page 5. It's just a typo. It says some students are going to Stanford. It's supposed to be Stanford without the D, which is very exciting. Okay, with those two changes, anyone want to make a motion to approve that? Mr. Holt,
Motion to approve as amended.
is there a second? Mrs. Bush.
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Were you in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Okay, it's unanimous, thank you. Okay. Move on to item 4.0, opportunity for Board of Education to add or delete agenda items. Mr. Holt.
I'd like to add item 8.9, which would be a donation from the Vernon Education Foundation.
Is there a second? Mr. Stansel. Any comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to item 4.2, Rockville High School Student Representative. Olivia.
Hello, good evening. So class day went off really well. It was good for all the seniors to have an opportunity to go on like one last field trip, I guess you could call it. And either that or those who didn't go, I know a lot of people went to the beach or just took the day off. So it was a good Friday. I'm very proud to hear about Northeast School achievement, being as I went there as a student, and I remain close with the school. It's very good to see the improvement, and I know personally the teachers and the hard work that they really put in. And so I'm really happy to see something going really positive in terms of Vernon school systems. It was proms went off also, senior and junior prom. It was, from what I've heard, it was a great time. There wasn't any big trouble. There wasn't anything to worry about really, and I know everyone who went had a really good time. And today was senior skip day at school. Well, some of us didn't get to enjoy it and had to be at school for different reasons. I know a lot of people, it was very vacant in the hallways. So it was very interesting. Teachers were just like, why are you here? I didn't make plans because I didn't think you were gonna be here. And it was really funny. The NHS induction ceremony was last Wednesday, I believe. Tuesday, one of those. They're all mixed up in my head. And it went really well, kind of passed the torch. All the seniors that are in NHS got to stand up and say where they're going and what they plan on majoring in. So hearing those final decisions is really quite exciting. Tomorrow, the music department is starting something new. Usually in the chorus department at their Pops concert in the spring, they'll have seniors do solos. But Ms. Shuttleworth, she started that the band and chorus students have their own night. So tomorrow night is the senior solos. You have to audition, and so I know there are quite a few students doing it. There's a potluck at 5, and then playing will take place from 6 to 7:30 in the auditorium. So I welcome any of you who want to stop by and kind of get a taste of our individual talent within that department. Senior and undergrad awards. Undergrad awards were last week, And last Thursday, I know that one for sure. And this Thursday is the senior awards. And I know everyone's excited to hear about scholarships. And I know from going to my sisters and other people that it's a good night and it's awards students who really deserve the recognition and the hard work that they've put in. Lastly, it's exciting. The end of the year is coming, and for AP Photo kids who, we already took the exam, and after that, seniors are already kind of checked out. We're taking pictures. We're assigned for each of the retirees this year, and we have 4 of them, and it's a really great opportunity. And I just think it's such a wonderful idea. There are 4 different assignments within a group. You're assigned each teacher and you really get to personalize it for them and their needs. And one of the assignments is manual black and white photography like you learn in Photo 1. And all the teachers get to sign. When you mount it, you get to sign the frame, kind of cardboard mounting stuff with a silver Sharpie. And I know with the type of film and paper it is, that it really can last forever. And so it's just a really great idea, and I thought I would show or talk about it to you guys because it really represents how much other teachers and students care for the staff that is leaving our school this year. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Olivia? Mrs. Arndt?
So is senior skip day on our calendar?
I don't really know how it's chosen. Because I know it's usually on Monday, but today's Tuesday. I don't know, I think the way it just fell, kind of.
And I'm wondering, I hope it's not true, the teachers actually planned their curriculum, their lesson plan, whatever, based on a rumor of a senior skip day. Hope that's not true.
Yes, please do.
I have Ms. Tringali and Mr. Rocket in the audience who are shaking their heads and saying absolutely not. Teachers were supposed to plan full lesson plans the entire day.
Any other questions for Olivia? Thank you very much, Olivia. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.0, Community Forum. Opportunity for comments on agenda items, potential future agenda items, or general information provided to the board from citizens and community organizations. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? Okay, then we will move on to item 6.0, Personnel. Item 6.1, approval of leave of absence request for child rearing.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. We have a 7th grade science teacher at the middle school who is giving birth hopefully at the end of July. She will actually be on FMLA leave until October 16. So where it says September 5, that should read October 17. So the leave she's requesting from the board is October 17 this fall through January 2, the 15th. That's a Friday, so she would be returning to work on the following Monday. Mr. Harrison said this schedule that she's requesting would fit into to his plans. She will be gone really from the beginning of the school year, so there'll be a sub in there through the Christmas break. And so I would ask that you approve that leave.
Mrs. Bush?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve a leave of absence for Danielle Pierce for child rearing from approximately October 17th, 2014 through January 2nd, 2015.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments, concerns? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, item 7.0, curriculum. 7.1, Rockville High School Agriculture Education Center. Program compliance review by Connecticut State Department of Education.
As Mr. Rocket and Ms. Fitzgerald are getting ready, Ms. Patrick, excuse me, are getting ready, I bring your attention to the response from Vernon Public Schools from Rockville High School Ag program. It's in your folders this evening. That was prepared for today. It is due, I think, tomorrow actually. So that was ready today. So that would be in your folder. It's a 2-page or one double-sided. Was that double-sided? Thank you, and that would be the review. So you now have the original report and the response. And I would turn this over to Ms. Fitzpatrick and Mr.
Mrs. Owen?
Could I request just a minute to take a look at this? Just a moment. I haven't read it. Was it the?
Oh, for the response? you mean?
Right.
Okay. Sure. Anybody had enough time? Yeah. Okay. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Conway, members of the board. You have the report in front of you. I will say that we consider it at Rockville High School a very, very successful report. We're extremely pleased with it. It's in the nature of an audit from an outside agency. And as you know, if you have experience in the business world, audits must find something else they think you're overstaffed and cut your program. And so when we saw these very few items, we were extremely pleased. The process has a similarity to NIASC in that it's an external check on our system with several state folks and sort of colleagues, if you will, professional members of the Ag Ed staff throughout the state to come in and do an external review of our program. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Fitzpatrick to go over some specifics, but I'll point to the first commendation, the first sentence. The teachers are dedicated, inspirational, and supportive. The Ag Ed program in general is an extremely well-designed program because it has a hands-on and academic component. And I'll tell you that we in Rockville and our students specifically are blessed to have such a fabulous board of teachers. So to go over the specifics, I'll turn it over to Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Rocket, and again, thank you for having us here this evening. I think in your packet you had previously, so you could see just a little bit about what this process involves. And it takes us about a year or so to prepare, and these audits essentially happen, site visitations once every 5 years. And in your packet, you also have a compilation of the state statutes by which we're governed, and we need to provide documentation to the state that we are indeed adhering to the state standards, which I have here. This is one copy. We're provided with these notebooks to the site visiting team 2 weeks prior to their visit, and it documents everything according to the statutes, whether or not we are in compliance. You also have the final letter that went to Dr. Conway. And again, all of them, I think we were very pleased with the commendations. The recommendations, I think, are fully within our scope to work on, with some assistance from administration and so forth. I don't know if you have any questions.
Mr. Stansel.
I just wanted to say that since I got to participate in this, the reviewing committee was extremely complimentary of the program, and they basically outlined everything that's in this when they spoke to the committee. So it was it's good to see that it came out the same way they said it was going to come out.
Thank you, Mr. Stansel, for participating.
Nobody else has any questions? So most of these things we can fix, like I was wondering if the Sykes Foundation would be able to pay for some of the, like the upgrading the shop ventilation, but it looks like you don't need that.
Not sure. I know we're pursuing that. Mr. Rocket is working with maintenance facilities to see how we could go about taking care of that for us.
And the shop equipment to represent industry standards?
I'm in contact with Mr. Mackin, who's our state consultant, and he was out of the office from the end of last week and through today or tomorrow. to find out exactly what he was referring to and to offer a little more explanation so we can pursue that as well.
So it might be something that we might request of the Psych Foundation in the future, if need be, or not necessarily.
So we find out what it is.
You're right, okay. Mr. Stansel.
I actually realized I had one more comment. The state committee was very clear that, you know, we should talk to them about recruitment, about getting more bodies into the program. And they offered whatever help and guidance they could. So I know that it's long been a desire to increase that program. So I do hope that we work with them as much as possible to do that.
Thanks.
This might be a good opportunity to say, last year's freshman class into the Ag Ed program was 18 members. This year we have 31 and counting, and that's due to the efforts of Ms. Fitzpatrick and her team. So we're fully aware of our need to go out there and recruit, and this year it's worked.
What is our maximum capacity?
Good question.
Good question. I would probably say around 100 students, plus or minus.
And where are we right now?
Starting next year, hopefully we'll be in the 70s. I think we're on the way back up. That's my sincere hope.
Mrs. Bush?
I just have to commend you for your recruiting. When I was a liaison for the ag department, they came up with some very innovative ideas, and for your open houses and things like that, and the mailing. And I think you have such a supportive consulting committee and parent group that it's very helpful to have these results of 31 plus students coming into the program from their hard work.
Thank you, Mrs. Bush.
A key player in that is Mr. Harrison and the folks at the middle school who are very, very supportive of our recruiting efforts down there, even going so far as to allow us to bring our alpaca into their auditorium, which he was all on board with, of course. So he and their staff are doing some of the credit also.
Does anybody else have it? Mrs. Arndt?
You have quite an agenda for your summer staff meeting.
We always do.
Oh, so this isn't out of the ordinary.
Oh, gosh, no.
Okay. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate, you don't have to come back and see us, Karen, but just to report about some of the interesting things on here, like the diversity in the large animals and that kind of stuff. If you just send a report back to us.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Also, while you're here, I just want to commend you and your staff, Mrs. Harlow, for the great job you did on hosting the State Go Ag Convention here at Rockwell High.
Thank you.
I came in the afternoon, I wasn't here in the morning, but it was great. You guys did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Everybody seemed very thrilled with the day.
We have an awesome staff.
Thank you.
Supportive administration.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 7.2, summer school programs at BCMS and Rockwell High.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. At our board's last meeting, you received an overview that Mr. Bellis had prepared and Mr. Berg shared with you. This evening, we have the middle school and high school administration here to share the summer programs for middle and high school.
Thanks. Thank you again. And so, as you'll hear from Mr. Harrison, we designed our plan in concert with the middle school. And you'll hear something different tonight. In a moment, I'll turn it over to Ms. Tringale to go over some of the specifics to give you a flavor of exactly what we're doing. I'll tell you that the general design is that of blended learning, which has a computer component and a teacher component. It's not strictly online. It's not strictly teacher. It's a blended learning environment. It furthers our pursuit of allowing kids to learn at their pace, perhaps an accelerated pace, and to give us the opportunity to do differentiated instruction. For the kids that need it, we spend more time with them. For the kids that are advanced and can move faster, they are allowed to move faster. It really is the next step in our digital, our movement towards digital instruction, or a component of digital instruction. But I have to say that this is designed to have a human component, and it is not something we're looking to replace teachers. It really allows us to differentiate instruction. In context, you should know that the general approach is for credit recovery for summer school. That's the general approach. But we have plans to institute for second semester original credit courses, namely courses that kids have not taken before for advancement or original credit. The VEA is working very closely with us, and they're full partners with us in this venture. So we're very excited about the direction. We're really moving forward. I'll say this is a key step in our movement towards what I hope will be a board passing of a one-to-one program later this year, perhaps. But I'll turn it over now to Ms. Tringella to go over the specifics of the summer school, and then Mr. Harrison.
I just wanted to explain the general gist of what the day might look like for our students. Summer school is still scheduled at our normal 4-week time frame. Same time as before, from 8 a.m. to 1:15. Students taking, I'll give an example, a student taking Algebra 1 for credit recovery may have a default schedule where they could show up from 8 to 10:30 on day 1. Day 1, all teachers will follow their default schedule. They will explain when students might be required to be in the classroom. We want to allow for some flexibility. So for example, in a different class, like a history class, there may be seminars that are required, but won't all be given on this Wednesday. They might be given on Monday and Wednesday of this week and Tuesday, Thursday of next week to be able to have that flexibility for our students. The goal would be on day 1 for teachers to lay out the schedule in terms of the modules on GradPoint. GradPoint is a Pearson product, and we'll use that for our blended approach. So if we have a certain number of modules for students to move through, which are aligned, then within a week of summer school, we would expect our students to be 25% through those modules. If students are successful, then they may only need to check in on those required seminars or for science classes for labs or things of that sort. For students who are struggling, they will then be required to come into the classroom to get one-on-one instruction from the classroom teacher, the math certified teacher that's set up to be in the school for summer school courses. So it allows for true flexibility, true differentiation. It really requires differentiation because that student coming in for an Algebra 1 class may have trouble with multi-step, solving equations that are multi-step. And so they will have to sit down with those students and work through those problems, try to help them make connections and make them successful in that module, and then be able to move on accordingly. But it truly requires a differentiated approach. Some students will, even though they're progressing at a normal pace, may opt to actually stay in school the entire day. Maybe they want to be done with summer school, and I can't see it happening in Algebra 1 necessarily, but let's say they want to really work hard and work 5 hours every day and stay in school for 2 solid weeks so that they can go on a family vacation or they can hold a summer job that has various hours. That's a possibility as long as they're progressing appropriately. So if they do want to be there for that time frame, and they don't necessarily have to be, they can be. We're working towards students being able to have access to our Chromebooks for the summer. So I know we're working on getting the approval there for the technology permission form over the summer, so that if they don't have a wireless connection at home, they could use one of our Chromebooks and go to the library or go somewhere else and still have that opportunity. They have access to the content 24/7 at whatever time is convenient to them. If they need the time from 8 to 1:15, they have it at our school with specific one-on-one instruction. In terms of the hiring, we have many internal applicants that have expressed interest in doing this, so that I think speaks volumes for the blended learning approach and teacher support. So that's pretty much the general gist. Any questions on that?
Sure. Michelle, I've always had a hard time wrapping my head around a student who fails a course for a year but is able to achieve a credit in 4 weeks for a course, and now to have the opportunity to
attend when it works for them or when it, on a flexible schedule, it seems to me to diminish the importance of achieving that credit during the school year. So making up credits in that shorter time, and now this not required to attend classes regularly, to add flexibility so they can do other things, just I have a hard time understanding that.
I appreciate your concern. Actually, if you've had an opportunity to really explore summer school, the traditional method that many systems do, it's not competency-based. It's almost like students have to pay their dues over the summer by showing up and sitting there and passing some nominal tests. It's not a reflection on the teacher, it's a reflection on program design. The great advantage of this is that it's standards-based. We have confidence in the grad point program, and they won't get credit unless they pass the standard as set by grad point. Again, a standard that we agree with. So we see it as, frankly, a tremendous leap in that regard. So I appreciate your concern, but really for us, we see it as a tremendous advantage.
How do those grad point standards line up against Rockville High School standards?
So very close. It's never exact. We've done crosswalks, and in some cases, the grad point requires more of their students than we have. Like you're looking at Algebra 1, they go beyond where ours are. In some cases, there's differences. We're satisfied that as a general matter, it's a very good product, sufficient for us to set this as the standard.
And in your opinion, Mr. Rocket, the students who achieve a credit the way most students do, and a student who achieves a credit through summer school are comparable?
Yeah, great question. Hard to say comparable, because over the course of a year, there are certainly advantages to being in a classroom, as teachers say, engaging in discussion, etc. But it's a huge advance over the traditional summer school model. A huge advance.
So are we doing the students a favor, or are we just letting them get a, I mean, is it instructionally sound, educationally sound, or is it just getting them a credit so that they?
No, I appreciate, I'm really with you in terms of your concern. I think the former model was really addressed, what you're talking about. It was just, if you go to school every day and do what they say, you'll get a credit. This model is different. We expect that a fair number of kids will take this, this summer school and not pass because they have not met the standard. We're concerned with them meeting the standard primarily. That's the big drive behind all this. Whereas previously, that was not the case.
Would the board consider asking for a report of the summer school results? Would you be willing to provide?
I would love to do that.
We always get that in the fall. We do
Right.
report from the summer.
But you should know that for us, we consider this as much an experience gathering opportunity for us. We know that we really need to refine our approach, change as necessary, but again, the primary advantage for us is that it's standards-based, and you can't hide from that standard in this case. Lindsay?
I was just going to add that it's a competency mastery-based approach as opposed to seat time. So it's not just sitting there doing your time, it's demonstrating mastery in the content, or they will not move further. So a student who can't move further, that's the student who's going to get a phone call home saying, it looks like you have attempted to take this test 3 times and you still haven't passed. You're struggling here, I need you to come in. And that student is going to get that individual instruction that you may not get in a class of 18 students, every single day. And the student has the opportunity to meet one-on-one or in small groups with other students struggling with similar things. But it is competency-based and mastery-based as opposed to just seat time, which has been the typical model.
Mrs. Bush.
Well, I'm real pleased to see that you are moving to the blended learning model for that, which would give us some practice for possible future inclusion of the blended learning model. One thing that I have a concern with, I know in the past you have had students from other districts come in for a fee and also make that available to them. Do you have concerns about possibly checking out Chromebooks to students from other communities that might not care for them as well as our Rockville students.
And we did think about that as well, so thank you for the question. As our plan is now, we're not planning on signing those out to the other districts. It's an agreement with our students in our district, and that's how that would be. Students in other districts, I've emailed and spoken to the sending districts, the common sending districts who have sent students to our summer school in the past. And they said that wouldn't be a problem for them, that students generally have access, and those who don't would be showing up daily at Rockville High School for the access.
Mr. Stansel.
I really appreciate that you're trying the blended learning model. I understand Michelle's concerns, but on the flip side, I recognize that there are a lot of students who don't necessarily learn as well in that typical classroom setting, and this might give them an opportunity to get that credit recovery. I'm interested, though, in the statement you made about opening it up for students who want to excel. So you didn't really talk a lot about that, and I'd like to hear sort of what your thoughts are around that. How do those credits count? How do they count grade-wise, things like that?
So the threshold question there is whether or not we consider grad point as meeting our standard, given that it's a standards-based program. And generally the answer is yes. We had originally planned to offer that opportunity this summer. The VEA came to us and made some great suggestions. I'll tell you that we have a very strong partnership at the high school, and they asked to be involved in the process and for us to delay, and we agreed because we saw the wisdom of some of their points. They made suggestions like, for example, that we have required seminar days that Lindsay mentioned. So we do believe that in general grad point meets our standards. Part of our process is doing what's called a crosswalk, where we take our curriculum and the grad point curriculum and we align those matters. And as I mentioned earlier, most of the time grad point meets or exceeds our internal standards. So we don't think a blended learning approach is for everybody all the time. But it provides an opportunity for some kids to excel. And we're going to develop that in concert with the union over first semester in time to try and implement a pilot for second semester.
Anyone else have any questions? Is this the first time you're using the grad point curriculum or program?
Yeah, we had its predecessor, also a Pearson project, a product called Novanet. This is their updated version called Grad Point. So we've had some experience with Grad Point itself.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Mr. Rocket or Ms. Valley? Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Harrison.
Well, as you can tell by my silence, this is something that the middle school is watching very closely as well. Mr. Rocket and I have met a few times, and we're hoping to see how it works out, and then in the very near future to look to mirror it or to take something on similar at the middle school. As of right now, we will continue to run a more traditional punitive type program. If kids do not meet promotional criteria, which is if they fail more than one class, we offer summer school. And we hear very clearly the questions because we struggle as well with 20 days make up for an entire year. But I think what happens is, and what we've continued to do is, we flag students as early as November, and we attempt to put interventions in place, and we attempt to work and place different strategies and include a lot of different people. It could be related services, family, teachers. And then so at the end of the year, the discussion is always what makes the most sense. We look at intelligence, we look at performance factors in a student's life that might affect his ability to be successful. So we make that decision with our eyes open to say, yes, it's only 20 days, but it is 20 days of good teacher-student ratio, intense instruction, and it's repetition and practice. And it's better than if they didn't have anything. And then after that period, we meet. What we'd like to do and what we've tried to do the last couple of years is create enrichment opportunities for students. But especially at the middle school. And in the high school, they have credit recovery, but especially at the middle school, when you're not necessarily looking at credits, it becomes difficult because we're self-funded. And so when you put it to a parent that your student runs the risk of being retained and has to do this in order to meet the minimum qualifications, that's one thing. If you're also saying your child is marginal, they could use some practice, but there's a cost to it, sometimes that's a deterrent for parents to be able to do that. So we're looking very closely because we would like to offer other opportunities and individualized program for students, especially going into the high school, to get acclimated to what's going on up there. So we're going to look very closely and try to certainly partner with them to see what's the best way we can do this. It's difficult also because when you look at enrichment opportunities for students, and we last year had teachers available in tech ed and math, we wanted to make sure kids were acclimated going to the high school. But again, enrichment opportunities, some parents are available the first week in July, some people are available the first week in August, or the second 2 weeks in July. When it's enrichment opportunities and you try to run a structured program, it's difficult at times, whether you just make it a 2-week program, to hit all of the students you want. I think with some of what the high school is doing, if we can tailor it to the middle school, we might be able to be more creative with that moving forward. So it's something we're talking about right now, even though we're not looking to do that right now. And we're just starting our end of the year meetings to look at total numbers of students that might be failing and what our option would be. Even though we're not offering that, we clearly see that we want to offer these as enrichment opportunities, as opportunities to get more acclimated to what's expected at the high school, and to individualize instruction, again, to see if students have mastered certain material, because we don't want to just look to retain them, or we don't want to add yet another layer if they're having difficulty navigating their way through middle school. So we're very closely monitoring that. We're not as far ahead as they may be, but again, Mr. Rocket and I have talked a couple of times about this, and we'll be looking very closely at how successful it is.
Mrs. Arndt.
Mr. Rocket and Ms. Tringali said that there may be some students who don't recover the credit. They have it at the middle school. You're at the advantage or disadvantage of it's not a credit, but would someone be determining whether that student really can move forward rather than be overwhelmed when they get to the high school? So regardless of the attendance at summer school, are there still decisions to be made about certain students who just can't go to the high school?
Every year this seems to be, and again, just so you know, we meet now with related services, all the team teachers, we involve everyone, including the parents. Summer school comes, and we meet afterwards to see if someone went, if they were successful, how they did, how their attendance was, if they didn't go. And that same group of people meet and say, okay, what's in the best interest, whether they're prepared for the high school, emotionally, academically, what's the best decision not only for right now, but for their future. There's a lot of things that come up. And as research will show, and it's not always successful if you retain students, but we also know very clearly, and we've talked about this, what's staring us right in the face is if students do not perform well when they go to the 9th grade, then how have we prepared them from the 8th? So it's that balancing act that we're constantly saying we need to prepare them. We can't just push them along. But by retaining them or keeping them back, are they truly going to be successful, or things change? Sometimes in the middle school, it's more a question of maturity, or maybe there was a pretty traumatic incident that really affected them, and maybe they'd be better off. And those are decisions that are made, and we talk, be it with central office and other decisions are made. But it's not something we take lightly. It's a difficult question to answer, to say that if they do this, they'll move on. If they don't, they'll stay back. We take it on an individual basis. And in those cases, be it attendance or be it some other situations, these type of programs might allow us to have them do more in the way of either credit recovery or in the way of just mastering certain materials, so we feel better about them going to the high school as well.
So when students are moved along through the elementary school with supports, they're not reading at grade level, but they moved along with supports, it's got to catch up with them somewhere. So I'm figuring it catches up with you guys at the middle school. So I'm glad to hear that you are, basically every student is considered before they're moved on, and some it works and some it doesn't.
And in everyone's defense, I mean, you never know when's the right time. We're in the same situation if a 6th grader is struggling, and we know for the most part, if we retain them, or if you only have one card to play, more or less, do you do that in the 6th grade, or do you see how they do in the 7th grade? You see, and then so that decision at times is difficult because you have the one card to play in some ways. But again, looking at options like this, I think you can individualize, and even if you make some decisions about where they're at, you can also look at how they're mastering certain material and whether they're truly able. It just gives you a little bit more fodder to look at and say, okay, we have the full picture of what the student's capable of and what's in their best interest.
Mrs. Bush.
You're interested in seeing how it works at the high school at grade point. Is there a component from middle school with grade point?
I believe yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's good to know.
Just kick me.
It'd be interesting if you maybe explored it a little with maybe a few students that this would benefit. I could also see that possibly eighth graders moving into ninth grade maybe can benefit from maybe a little acceleration to come into the high school having a few skills under their belt, maybe even allowing them to go into the high school to, like, I know when you go to college, a lot of times you'll go to summer school before you go into college to take some courses. I could see that being a great benefit for our incoming freshmen, making that transition into a high school. I would love to see that, the use of that grade point expand a little more, so just.
A couple of things about where, in some ways, I know Mr. Rocky and I have talked about that as well. We want to recognize kids with certain aptitudes, and we want them to start, not just summer school. If they're capable of doing some things and reaching out and taking classes at the high school, or, we're looking at, we have some of our eighth graders tutoring, some of our sixth graders now looking to provide them with community service hours. And we're looking all the time to take advantage of some of those things. And I want to make sure that I'm clear, even though this is a summer school piece, we're looking on an everyday basis to try to expose those kids to that right now, because you might have a kid who doesn't necessarily work right now with the traditional classroom, but can go into one of our computer labs and work with some of the teachers, and they can have self-directed instruction with a teacher there to supervise it. We're trying to do that right now. Just as a summer school program, we're not where they're at.
If I can just amplify on that, Jim mentioned the community service component. That's one of 3 opportunities for middle school students to earn high school credit. We're instituting a program next year because of a change in state regulation whereby kids at the middle school that take Algebra 1 at the end of the year will take our final exam, and if they pass, they'll earn a math credit at the high school. Our world language department is coordinating with the middle school whereby if they take, say, a Spanish 7th and 8th grade, at the end of that we're developing a competency program where they will get world language credit for us as compared to just being allowed to matriculate to, say, Spanish 2. So they could earn the credit. And the third is community service. We analogize it the same way, that if they're ahead of the curve, so to speak, and they're able to demonstrate the competency, they'll earn those community service hours creditable towards 9th grade.
Anybody else have any questions? I do. I think I heard you properly that they have to fail. If they fail 2 classes, then they don't get promoted. Is that correct?
If they fail more than one, they do not meet technically promotional criteria. So then they would have to take, they could only fail 1. So if they fail 2, they have to at least go to summer school for 1 class. We most of the time will recommend they take 2.
Okay, so kids that fail just 1, you would still recommend them coming to
Correct,
summer
and even kids who are marginal, who maybe just squeak by, we make phone calls.
Right.
Again, it's that, unfortunately, if it's self-funded, that parent can say, I'd love for them to go. But yes, but we also try to recommend that. So yes, even marginal, we try to recommend, and even kids who are looking for some enrichment classes, we try to offer that as well.
And my other question, are you finding this year that more students are failing because we've raised the passing grade to 70, or are you not seeing that?
No, and I don't want to speak yet, but I've been pleased with some of the results so far. We just had a couple of end-of-year meetings, and I think we're trying to do more work again earlier in the year to flag them and start to work early. So I don't see any more based on that.
So raising it to 70 did not, that's good to hear.
Mr. Rocket, this isn't a summer school, but you alluded to it, so I'll follow up. We were at a recent meeting with the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and one school is, I thought, using their advanced student, I don't know how to put it, their gifted students in high school to teach classes at the middle school, like an advanced math student at the high school could teach a 6th grade math class for credit, both community and grade-wise, and I thought that was pretty challenging and a creative way to use an excelling student. from the high school.
That's an awesome idea, and I'm going to cogitate on that and see if we can develop that. I know right now we use our advanced students as tutors and assistants in some cases, but not having them as a credit-bearing responsibility to teach someone else. That's a great idea.
They also, we have a wonderful gem in town, the Civil War Museum. They're always looking for support so that
Right.
a gifted student could actually work weekends there, touring, sharing their knowledge about artifacts in Civil War, and do that as a community service as well as credit toward graduation. It's just another way to use some students for creative credit.
Again, a great idea, and that totally fits with our strategy of allowing kids to earn credit and to learn in different ways. So that's a fabulous idea also.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 7.3, donation from the Sykes Foundation. Dr. Conway.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Burt, but I'll bring your attention to an addendum to the grant. This is for the fire technician course. The Sykes Foundation is concerned about one of our retirements at the high school. And so this should have been in your folder this evening. It looks just like that. So that's just an addendum, and I'll turn this back over to Mr. Burt.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. As we're getting set up, I can give you a brief introduction to some of the things that we've done this year that are a little bit different than in years past. We've begun to approach the idea of the Sykes Foundation as trying to become in line with our processes, specifically for 6 through 12. We want to make sure that we're not just using them as nice to have, but they're really aligning with all of the projects that we tend to are doing in our schools. To give you an example, we have convened a committee of middle school and high school teachers in various departments, business department, tech ed department, family consumer science, as well as administrators from the middle school and the high school to help us give direction to this. We also started a new application process this year that asked the teachers to give some justification for the request of how it fits in with their department's vision, the course vision, their school's vision, and what does it look like 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years out. So we've done a lot of work over the past 6 months, and so some of the requests that we see today really are part of that process. I have to really thank Nicole Phelan, our grant writer, who was unable to attend this evening. She's done a lot of this work, as well as the administration from the high school and the middle school for supporting this. We really are looking for an articulated program now between the middle school and high school to ensure that we're preparing our students in 6th, 7th, and 8th for some of the significant changes that Mr. Rocket has undertaken at the high school, and to ensure that they are ready for those different courses, the college and career ready courses, and for some of the different tracks that are being introduced there, as well as opening up some exciting opportunities for our students. Just to give you an example of some of the other changes, we also met with the Sykes Foundation board, and the meeting was originally just myself, Mr. Testa, our STEM coordinator, and Ms. Fillion, our grant writer. And the board is a little different makeup now, and they're asking a lot of very deep, significant questions about, are we reaching the right type of student? Are we really getting are we making sure we're keeping kids in school? The foundation's purpose really is to address the needs of students who are not going on to, say, a traditional four-year college, and they wanted to make sure that we are addressing that. Because a lot of our requests are in technology, and the original foundation was all about hands-on. It was all about essentially preparing workers for factory work. Well, times have changed, they've adapted, so have we, and we believe that the grants that we've received so far and that we're going to be requesting tonight, or for your approval, is that we are moving students to have different careers that are not necessarily just hands-on, but ensuring that we are holding to that original requirement from the Sykes Foundation. I'm going to start out with just a quick update of where we are with our current foundation request. As you can recall, last year, one of the primary things was the STEM manufacturing at the high school. This is the before picture. This was this summer. Our staff here did a tremendous amount of work clearing out all the machines and painting and really cleaning up and making it a much brighter space. We did put all the machines back. I want to draw your attention to that large gray object to the left. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That is one of the originals, from what I understand, one of the original machines from the Sykes High School that's down near Central Office in downtown Rockville. I think it's from the early 1970s, late 1960s. If you actually look at the panel on it, it's all push-button technology, and I think there's a little green display that shows a few characters. But it's a massive piece of machinery that no longer works because, not because we don't want to use it, but because the parts are no longer available. They just don't make them anymore, and you can't find any salvage either. But as you can see, the room is cleaned up. In the middle there, you can sort of see a little blue piece in here. Little blue print. Those are the 3D printers that were acquired through different grants, but that's also part of the process. One of the things that the students are doing in here, and eventually what we're going to have on these desks, are high-level desktops that are capable of running our new CAD program. And so this is truly a design to production room. So you sit and you would design using the CAD software at these desks here, and then you would actually print it out, or you could send those instructions when we had more advanced machinery and produce those 3D objects, whatever it is that they have to be designing. In some cases, I know they've recently designed a hovercraft and those type of things, but down to small pieces of machinery. One of the other things that we've done is we've revamped what we call the Business Concept Center, which we want to make sure that we have a flexible space for our students. This is the before picture. The space was used, clearly as you can see, used for storage. And now it's a beautiful classroom with flexible seating. Those triangle desks can be put in multiple formations. Through this grant also we received Apple laptops, which are very powerful and are flexible for that grouping, as well as a smart board. So multiple uses for this classroom. We're very excited, and I believe the teachers are very excited about the possibilities as well. One of the other things that we were able to put in with this year we finalized, and from the previous grants, was similar. You can see similar desks, similar arrangement. These are desktops, but they are powerful desktops. But you still have the flexibility of moving these desks around. And these are now business applications. We have a very powerful program in 6th and 8th grade. We'll be applying for some more technology in 8th grade. And we ensure that we have that powerful program in 7th grade as well in the future. So again, we're looking at new spaces, flexible spaces, trying to adapt, as Mr. Rock was talking about with that blending learning spaces. The concept of, just rows of seats all pointing towards the front of the classroom is an old model. We want to make sure that we're providing flexibility for our students. One of the things that we were able to process this year, as you may recall from the presentation last year, was the composter for the Ag Ed department. The original quote for that was with one company, and the company, through our investigation, did not seem to be a viable company that we would trust with paying. Essentially, they were looking for all the funds up front. And it was a one-man operation. And so we decided not to purchase it from that company, and we were unable to find an equivalent product for the same price range. We did work with the Ag Ed department. They are going to be continually looking at different products and see what they can come up with in the future. For our current proposal, we have a number of items coming. The first is from the Rockville High School Business Ed department. They are seeking these 21.5-inch iMacs, which you can see at the lower right-hand corner, as well as getting our students involved in something in Oracle Academy. Essentially, we're training our students to be Oracle certified. Essentially, almost every program we use, specifically on the web as well, is backed by the languages that they're going to be learning. And in some cases, the hope is in the future that these students would be able to leave high school having certification, in other words, be immediately employable upon leaving. These are high-demand jobs in the tech industry. This is our current STEM lab, that current lab. And if you see a computer with a little pink slip on it, that means it's dead and or dying. So you can see that we have a few computers that are on their last legs, and they're not powerful enough. These computers range between 6 and 10 years old. They're not capable of running some of the latest software, and so this is really a high need for our students. Going back to, if you remember that large gray machine, on the left is an example. This is not the exact model, but this is a CNC milling machine. It actually turns on multiple axes. That large part of the top can go back and forth, left and right, up and down, so you can mill complex structures with this. On the right-hand side is a laser engraver. It can engrave anything you have. If you have an Apple iPod, you can engrave the back of it, down to a very small micron level, with all sorts of different designs, all obviously designed by the students. And again, this gives us the capabilities of using the CAD software to design something and then see it happen right in the same room, which is an exciting aspect for our students. We also have an application from our middle school. Again, this is talking about that alignment. They're looking for some improved computers in their tech ed room, and that's specifically to run a CAD software. This is called the SolidWorks Education. This is industry standard. It's also accessible to students. They have an education edition. One of the projects they had we were going to develop is a deep sea rover that you could actually design and build. But the purpose of this, again, is to align with the high school, because if they prepare using this software, they're able to access the software in the high school. So we have full alignment, okay, for 6 through 12. One of the other proposals that, fits in a little bit differently is from the Ag Ed department. They're requesting a small amount to start a beekeeping process here, and not on campus, but at, I understand, an off-site, where I believe they grow Christmas trees. It's a different parcel of land. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it's definitely not on campus. Mr. Picard are looking into this because we want to make sure that we're addressing any liabilities or any safety issues. He's been in contact with our insurance company, as well as some other folks, including the Connecticut Beekeeping Society, I believe. So this one's on hold to ensure that we have the full safety of our students and we have all safety precautions in place. But it's an interesting concept. This is actually a very important industry, and we know that there are groups that bring around their bees to different fields to pollinate those fields for the production of fruits and vegetables. Again, as Dr. Conway said earlier, an addendum, one of the most important things that came out of our discussion with the Sykes Foundation was that they were worried about the ending of our fire technology course because of the retirement of Mr. Stephen Augustus. And we were lucky. Mr. Rocket was instrumental in bringing in a new tech ed teacher, but unfortunately she does not have the certification at this time. There is a possibility that in the future. So we were unable to offer that course for the 14-15 school year. But they definitely wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence and ensure that we did crossed every bridge trying to find someone that could teach this course. We approached Mr. Augustus and said, would you be willing to come back and teach this part-time? And he agreed to. He is going to be teaching one section of it, which is essentially a 0.2 FTE for the following year, which gives us some breathing room to find another long-term solution. So we're very pleased to add that in, and the Sykes Foundation was excited to find that out as well. They felt that this is an important connection. It's one of the few programs in the state, and it does a lot of feeder work to the surrounding communities and their fire departments, so they felt it was an important connection between the schools and the town. And that's all I have for you. If you'd like to ask me any questions, I'm available.
Mrs. Arden.
Bees are critical to our environment, and I know about this shortage and the disease and the ramifications when we don't have bees and all that. You said student safety. Never mind, I won't ask that. It's on hold until you get insurance feedback. Is that liability feedback?
Through the chair.
Yes.
As part of doing our due diligence, we checked with our liability insurance provider, USI, and so they raised some concerns about licensing, regulations. So there was it's much more involved in saying, okay, we want to have a bee program, we want to make sure that we're compliant. If we need to apply for license to maintain the bees, we want to make sure that we're in compliance with all regulations. I think to Mr. Bird's point, this is very novel, and it's exciting because it's never, according to our insurance company, they've never come across it before. So this was a completely new territory for them. And so they were just giving us advice and making sure we do everything that we possibly can to dot our I's, cross our T's before we execute the program. But it sounds very exciting, and it has a lot of potential.
So barring some awful news from them, the bees would go forward. Sykes likes the idea, and VOAG likes the idea, and it's just getting those things answered. Okay.
Can I just ask a question piggybacking off of that? Are there students interested in doing the beekeeping? Do they know?
Yes.
Oh, they are. Okay. Crazy. Why?
Oh, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Does anybody else have any questions? Mrs. Butcher?
I see you're getting a new CNC mill machine. What software are they planning on using to, I think they've used SolidWorks before for that, and is that going to continue on so that there would be continuity between the middle school and the high school?
I did check on this, and they would be able to use the SolidWorks for the 9th grade. My understanding, and the name of the program is escaping me for the upper grades, but it's a more advanced program that have more capabilities. But I did check on this to make sure that the skills that they learn in using the other software in middle school were able to translate to the more advanced software. So that's not an issue. Also, from what I understand, these newer machines are able to communicate with basically all the major CAD software. So if you can export your designs.
You have a friend in Mark Summers. I hope you're using him to consult to get the right and the best stuff that is current for the, jobs that are available to our students.
I see that there's a dollar amount that Vernon is responsible for. Do you know where that's coming from?
My understanding is that through most of these projects, we have some costs associated with that. We do have, every year we do have some costs, but typically as we go through the process, that those are just used through typical hours from our own staff. Mr. Picard, do you have anything to add to that?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's exactly correct. Most of it's billable time that our staff, our maintainers, we would keep track of. We need to keep track of to be able to report back to Sykes that this was our contribution. So it's the majority of it is not us laying out any money from our budget that you would see a budget line item for it. But it does cost us because we're going to have an electrician do the wiring for some of the equipment, for example. That seems to be a theme throughout all the different projects.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns? All right, thank you. Anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Wu?
I make the motion that the Vernon Board of Education acknowledge the legacy of George Sykes and the works of the Sykes Foundation trustees and accept with gratitude the donation of 100, well actually it's the dollar amount going to be adjusted. 153,068 and 83 cents. To support and enrich the career and technology education program for students in the Vernon Public Schools.
Is there a second? Mr. Wu? Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. And please thank the Sykes Foundation for their generosity. Okay. Does anyone have a problem if we move the facilities report up so Mr. Peloso doesn't have to stay here all night? So we'll move to item 8.7, Facilities Committee report.
Thank you.
I'll find it. Hold on a second. There it is. Okay, Dr. Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. As you can see in your agenda brief, there are two motions, and in your packet you have the plan for the new entry at Northeast School and for the new entry at Skinner Road School. And then for information purposes, there is a picture of the antenna, and it will be the antenna without the dish. We're not doing the microwave piece. That the police department is requesting that goes on the central office roof. They've gone all over town, and this is an antenna that will boost signal in downtown Rockville. They lose signal between Fox Hill and the hill on South Street and another hill, and they will get on West Main Street and have no signal whatsoever. And so they looked all around town of what the best place was, and lo and behold, it was the central office building. So the committee didn't have any objections to that, but there were 3 members of the committee there, Mrs. Bush, Mr. Stansel, Mr. Lenton, and that's the overview. I'll turn it over to the chair.
I'm not the chair,
No,
but
okay.
I kind of was standing in that position. We met and we had no problem with the design of the entries for the 2 schools. We had a lot of questions about the garden for Skinner Road, but we were assured that it would be cared for and it was in a place that wouldn't, when we first met about it, we kind of turned it back with questions because we thought it was at the very front entrance and then it would, it would be looked at. Our concern was that the maintainability and the ability to continue its legacy of care. And we were assured that it would be cared for. If it wasn't cared for, we would have Mr. Kleinhans have a little fun with one of his machines and take it down. But we're really hoping that the garden would be a great learning experience for the students for many, many years to come. So after a lot of discussion, we decided to approve that and wish them the best of luck. And we'd like to see some of the fruits of the garden as well, not fruit, but vegetables. So we would highly recommend, as the facility committee, to approve both the entrances and the garden, and that's what we came across.
Mr. Stansel?
I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the plans as presented for the new entryway at Skinner Road School and Northeast School.
Second that.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Flynn?
Maybe I might have had the information or I missed it, but could you detail the reasons for the changes for the entryways to the schools? Is it security issues or is it just improvement in general usage?
I was hoping for the explanation of my drawing. I can't figure it out because my words are all blurred and I don't know where the entrance really is.
So, do you want to begin or do you want me?
The changes in the entrances, there's actually three buildings that are getting alterations to their entrances. The Rockville High School, Northeast School, and Skinner Road School. It is security, for security reasons. What we're trying to accomplish and what we will accomplish is funneling visitors through the offices when they come to the buildings. Right now, in this building, you can see it pretty easily. They come through that side door and they're not funneled through the office. So there's a few minutes of time when you don't know where your visitor is. And these changes will enforce people to go through the offices.
Now you mentioned about the high schools. I don't see anything related to that on this.
Yeah, the high school, we had discussed at an earlier facilities meeting. It was accepted. All 3 projects were accepted, but we made changes to Northeast School and this school. So we brought it back to the facilities meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Any other, Mrs. Arndt?
Mr. Peloso, do you mind just walking us through the change at
Not at
Skinner
all.
and then the change at Northeast? What
Nor-
it will look like?
Northeast School, I wish we had an overhead. What we're doing is in the main office, we're taking out a window and putting in a door with a small vestibule in the inside of the room to do like a man lock. This entrance will only be used for visitors. It's not going to be used for bus drop off or pickup. It's not going to be the student entrances. It's only going to be a visitor. If somebody's coming to pick up a student from the nurse's office or has an appointment with a principal, they'll come in this way. The Northeast School project was the smallest project, but the most challenging because of the restrictions with space. If you look, if you look at the photo in the closet, it's on the top left, and the office is on the left. On the top of that picture would be your hallway, your interior hallway at Northeast. And on the bottom right-hand side, you see it's the new door entry. You can see there's a swing, I don't want to assume.
He has a question for
Oh,
you
I'm
as
sorry.
you're doing this.
So as you're explaining this, is that office, the main office, that is the current location of the main office?
That
Which
is.
is halfway down that hallway. So
Yes.
they're gonna be coming down the outside of the building some distance and then into that, where you have that, just above where it says side parking lot, they're gonna come in there.
Yes.
And that's gonna be a little airlock.
Yes.
Is what you're describing, into that current main office.
Yes.
And then once they're in, they would have to go all the way up to the top of the picture into the hallway where,
Correct.
sort of to the left-hand side.
Correct. And there's going to be a sidewalk built outside the door to the sidewalk that's now existing. So there's, right now it's a grassy area, but there will be a sidewalk that will lead people from the parking lot to that door entrance.
Does that make sense, everybody?
And now for Skinner. Or do you still have more? I'm sorry.
I just, so office personnel will be able to see the person coming in?
Yes.
That's, okay.
The Skinner Road, if you look at, if you can tell where the door entries are, I don't want to assume everybody are blueprint readers, but there's the door swings that look like an M almost, swinging out. That's, if the flat swing is to the left-hand side of your, if this side is your left. So right now, that's the entrance over here. They come in, and right now, Mrs. Simon's office is right to the right. What we're going to do is we are going to, where the main office is now, we're going to create 3 offices or 2 offices in a conference room. That would be like a social worker or a similar type area. And then where the preschool is, which is on the top of the page, is going to be the new office. And we have it designed, the doors are already in place. We just have to put special locks on, electronic locks on them, so that people will have to, when they come in, they'll have to funnel through that office, and if, wherever they're going, they could get their passes to go throughout the building. The door that leads into the current principal's office will always be locked. So that won't, they will never be able to take a right into that door, into that area.
Mr. Moon?
On that diagram, will there be camera controls there? Because I'm assuming that the office folks are not going to have as much visibility as, for example, the Northeast, where they're coming directly into that area.
That's correct. There's another project that we're going to be going out to bid for is upgrading the camera systems at each of the elementary schools. And that will be incorporated so that the office staff will be able to see who's coming up. We're actually having a 36-inch monitor installed at each elementary school office that will have cameras on, the views of the cameras on.
So the other set of doors out here and to the right, those will not be for coming and going then?
Correct.
No, okay. And there won't be a camera or anything there, it'll just be at this other entrance, that'll become the main entrance, and that one won't be?
That's correct. That won't be used as a normal entry. The camera locations are still to be determined, so there could be cameras there, but we're still discussing with a consultant.
You said the new principal's office is going to be where the preschool classroom is.
Yes.
Where is that
If you
preschool
look-
classroom going to go?
Where's the preschool classroom? It's going to room 5.
So that's
We're at 4. Room
available
4.
room right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Any questions about the antenna on the central office?
There's a motion.
I know, I just wanted. All right, so we have a motion to approve the plans for Skinner Road and Northeast School. All those in favor? Unanimous. Mr. Wolf?
my next question was going to be, do we need a separate motion for the antenna?
The antenna is
Or just information?
It says town building.
Well, I know,
We can object.
yeah, well, I know we approved it when they did it at the high school, and they put the antenna on the chimney at the high school. That's why I was curious if they were looking for approval or not.
We were told that was not necessary, so we did not put a motion out there. Just it was information.
Mr. Stanzi?
I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the plan as presented for the community garden at Skinner Road School.
Is there a second? Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up whether or not we, as a board, would like to at least take a stance and acknowledge that the antenna is going to be put on central administration, and that we don't need to approve it, but we acknowledge and accept that. I mean, there's no interference with kids in this particular location, but I think it makes sense that we just acknowledge that.
So you're gonna make a motion?
I'll make that into the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
Mr. Lynch? Okay, any questions or comments on that? Mrs. Bush?
One of the things that's a positive is we'll be able to get better police communication at Maple Street School in the lower area of there. So we really felt it would be a huge benefit to the school district to have it on central office.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll go back to 8.1. Technology inventory. Dr. Pesch.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. You have, and I'm not sure if Mr. Burt wants to chime in, this is the data. These reports were created by Mr. Lemoy. They did not come out of the WASP system, which is kind of disappointing. I would hope with all of this technology that we could have just generated our own reports. But these were created from the spreadsheets that came out of the WASP system. So Mr. Lemoy and Mr. LaFontaine went to every classroom in every school in the district. It took them from February until about 3-4 weeks ago. And they counted every computer that appeared as if it was alive. The ones they did not count were, there was a closet at the high school where there were CPUs in a pile in a closet with dust. With the old 5-inch floppy disk drives in them. And so they're assuming they were not used, and their word was that those used to be used for training for students to take apart computers and put them back together and those kinds of things. So those were not counted, but every other one. So if a teacher had a grouping of 4 computers in their classroom, the assumption was that all 4 were working. And if they weren't, there should be a help ticket in on it anyway. Each of these reports, and there are a bunch of them, are 3 pages long. The first one is just a graphic representation of the number of computers and their age. That was the year that's not the fiscal year. That is the year that they were actually purchased. So you can see that in 2012, that could have been the fall of 2012 or the summer of 2012, because that's generally when we buy equipment. 2008 was obviously a banner year for desktops, and if you look through, you'll see it was a banner year for many other things as well. So there are, as I said, 3 sheets. The first one is a graphic representation of our graph of the age and the number of computers. The second is the computers, the type of computer, and the number and their location on the second page. And then the third is the type of computer and the age. So that would take the bar graph on the first page and break that out so you could see exactly what type of computer was that. And so the different, we have the desktops, the laptops, the monitors, laserjet printers, inkjet printers, Chromebooks, tablets, trying to think of, interactive whiteboards, and I think that's it, and the Chromebooks, correct. So when you look at those, such as the ones we bought this year, I'm trying to think of what those were, we bought laptops this year, you'll see that it says 2013 for those, because that's when they what the calendar was on when we purchased those laptops. So, so that's what was input into the computer. So it's, again, not fiscal year, it's a calendar year purchase. And Mr. Burt, do you want to enlighten us a little bit more on that?
Just that Mr. Lemoyne and I will be working on a plan this summer for presentation in the fall. One thing to know is that we're not going to be looking at a true replacement plan of one-to-one. In other words, if there's a desktop sitting here, that it's going to get a desktop. We're going to take a closer look at the needs of the district, the needs of each school, and the needs of each classroom. Ensure that we are providing the best technology for that need for those students and for those teachers. In general, the themes that we're going to be looking at is ensuring that our teachers have mobility and continue with the laptop purchase plan that we started this year. And then take a look at giving our students mobility. That coincides with our plan from the Alliance Grant to create the wireless network in the middle school this year. This coming summer, we already have started plans for that. And then for next year, using Alliance Grant funds for next summer to make sure that all of our elementary buildings are wireless as well. So with that capability, we're going to add in the mobility for our students. And a final priority is to ensure that we are taking a look at our current technology to see if it's functioning well. And something that comes to mind, if you notice, is the Eno boards. And we are hearing, and Mr. Moy actually did a survey of teachers, an email survey, if you will, of teachers with smart boards, whiteboards, Eno boards, and said, what experiences are you having with that? And by far, a significant majority of our Eno boards are having problems. So part of our plan was taking a look at how do we replace those with more reliable technology while salvaging some of the pieces of those boards. The board itself is just a whiteboard. It's ceramic. It has little laser dots on it that give the coordinates to a pen that send a signal to your computer to show you where your pen is on the board. The projectors themselves can be any kind of projector, and we can salvage those for use in other buildings. So those are just some of the ideas we had off the top of our head. We don't have a full-fledged plan right now, but we'll be working on that with the town to ensure that we have a good plan going forward for the next 5 years.
If I may just add to that, if you recall, during budget season, the town did ask for a 5-year replacement plan from the board, and did indicate that they would support that in the board's budget going forward, the replacement plan. So right now we're looking at a significant amount of money over the next 5 years. Each year it would be approximately the same amount every year. We are hoping to have this ready by the second meeting in September, a 5-year plan, so that you'll then have a month to look at it and decide how you would like to present this to the town. I think they would probably like to know ahead of the budget season about the plan, so that they can also be ready and know what the plan would be for the amount of money that they would need to more or less plan for budget. Mr. Stenson.
Just a question on that to start. I've got several others. If we're going to a 5-year plan, when you look at this, when you look at the inventory and the age, I'm not sure how the first year would not be significantly higher, because you've got a large number of machines that are well past the 5-year date. So wouldn't the first year have to be a pretty hefty chunk of money in comparison, just to catch you up?
In a sense, maybe. We're going to take a close look at that, but depends upon where those machines are located. For instance, if it's in a computer lab in an elementary school that's not used for web surfing, type to learn, things like that, the requirements are not quite as high perhaps at the secondary level, where they're going to be doing different types of computing. Again, it's about application. And one of the things that we are finding, and this is an interesting turn of events, is that the Chromebooks that were purchased through the grant from the state to help us address the new testing, now that the testing is over, they're being utilized to their full extent throughout all buildings. And the feedback I'm getting from teachers, from students, and from principals is that these are very viable technology that really students find accessible.
I'm concerned overall about the state of technology in our district. I was extremely disappointed that the town saw fit to remove the laptop replacement plan that we had in the budget. I think that was an extraordinarily poor choice. I think we had some very sound reasoning for why we were moving forward. When I look through here and I see, the whiteboards that are a significant number are 5+ years old at this point, I'm not surprised they're failing. I doubt that they're really supposed to last much longer than that. But even when you look at the printers and the monitors and all the other pieces other than tablets and Chromebooks, which is great, we've been able to purchase a lot of that recently, but I worry that we've neglected a lot of the core infrastructure components. And I have to wonder, when you look at the printer pages, for instance, and the number of printers that we have that are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old plus, in maintenance alone, that's got to be a significant cost. So I would really hope that we could look at what we originally proposed, which was working with the town to come to some sort of technology lease arrangement, so that we could more frequently on a regular cycle replace all of this equipment and not just the computers.
Just a few things. It does worry me that we have so many older computers, but I would love to know how many are really being utilized. When you have a group of 4, are you really using them on a regular basis, or just using them as like slave computers to perform like type to learn and things like that? And to answer your question about smart boards, I have a smart board that has been functional for 7+ years, and it is a smart board brand. I think your problem was with the Eno boards and their ability to function for a length of time. Printers, like I said, the same thing. I've had a printer for a very long time, and it is still functional for black and white printing. Those things very, very, very good about lasting a very long time. My biggest concern right now is the lack of support for Windows 98, where we're moving into the Windows 8 operating system. And from what we've dealt with in my school system is we need to have that, to utilize the Windows 8 to its biggest capacity, to have those touch screens. And it's very frustrating to use the mouse and things like that in using it without a touch screen. So I would like to see that when we do replacement, really look at the needs, not just purchasing, with the Windows 8 without that touch screen capability. And from what I witnessed from my own students is their ability, even if it doesn't have a touch screen, you see these students touching the screen and trying to move things around because that's what they're used to and that's what's been happening in their lives. So I want to make sure what we're replacing them with is current enough to make sure the needs of the kids are met.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 8.2, graduation rates. Dr. Conway.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. The annual, or the graduation rate, the 4-year graduation rate is out for the class of 2013, so that was last year's graduating class. You can see that it is a drop from the previous. It is over 80, which is certainly where we want it. In 2007, we were well over 90, however. So we certainly have a long way to go. Mr. Rocket, who was here earlier, and Ms. Marinan have been talking about this, and part of the plan is the blended learning. We do have a blended learning teacher. We've added a teacher to summer school, and so we're very hopeful that we're going to be moving this around again, moving this forward. I did give you the annual dropout rate as well. It's only through the class of 2011. We don't have anything further than that because they're not reporting that anymore. But I thought you would like to see that. You don't add the two of them together to get 100. There are a lot of formulas in there. But you can see our dropout rate, it is still lower than the state average. The state average is about 3.5, so we were up a little higher and we've dropped below that right now. But I give this for your information. Mr. Rocket was unable to stay. Ms. Marion wasn't able to come this evening, but this was just released about a week ago from the state, so I wanted you to get this as quickly as possible.
Mr. Stansel.
Do we have a number of students that percentage corresponds to? So, I mean, that's a percentage of the graduating class, so I'm just curious what that number represents.
We have had, I want to say about 160 students, give or take, in the graduating class for the last few years. So 3% would be, and that's over 4 years. So that would be the students, that's the annual dropout rate, so that's the percent of students in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 altogether that dropped out in 2011.
Thank you. And then the 2013 graduation rate would be applicable to the 160?
Just to the 4 year, right, just to that particular class.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bush.
I'd like to know how many of those students end up going to our adult learning school, so that they're able to either go through a different channel to get their diploma or get their GED and also are successful.
If I might comment on that, Ms. Fisher, thank you. We also get a 5-year graduation rate, which would include any student that still had a few courses to take and didn't make it by the end of August, and then they would be considered 5 years. So they may have finished mid-year in that 5th year, or a full year in the 5th year, or got other credits and brought them back to school. Some of those can be in adult ed. You can take one class in adult ed and bring it back to school. I've asked that question that you just asked for many, many years because I want to see, I don't think high school is for everybody. And I think there are a lot of options out there. And one of those options is to get an external degree or adult diploma or a GED. And so I've often wondered, how many actually do get that ticket on to adulthood in some way or other. And the data is not clean. We're lucky that we have Verabe, so we can ask those questions. I certainly will follow up with Dr. Mendel. But we're graduating, how many this year? I think we've got around 40 who will be participating on the 12th, coming from all over there, all over, however, not just our students. But I will ask him if he can trace it in some way.
Mr. Flynn.
With the reduction this past year of the graduation, the 4-year rate, has there been any analysis applied to the reasoning why it might have bumped downward when there was a previous trend upward the last few years?
No, I've been, Kim Marion and Mr. Rocket both received this data. When you received it, that's when it was, they were able to look at it as well. And so that hasn't happened yet. Again, I wanted you to have this, this data, but I can ask her. She knows why each child either dropped out or didn't make it or transferred. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 8.3, school climate survey results. Dr. Vernon.
Again, you have the raw data in front of you. This was the end of May, and when it was ended, and then Christine took a couple of weeks to pull the data together from SurveyMonkey, and then she shared that with principals, and Mrs. Dwenzel created just the 2-column, so you could at least see 2 years worth of data. You do have 2 more surveys, I think, staff and certified and non-certified staff in your folder this evening that were not available. This had to be hand done with each office added the percent strongly agree and the percent agree so that they could get that column because most of the goals were that they created were that way. The one district goal we had was I feel welcome at my child's school, so I have to pull those numbers together. Obviously the percent is different in the different schools, but that's the first one in most of the parent surveys for the 7 schools. In some, they did certainly increase, and some they stayed about the same, some they went down. So I'm interested to see how those numbers come out. And we'll be doing that when we do the school and district improvement plan reports for you at the end. So the next step would be that the principals will be sharing this with their building leadership team and their school governance team to look not only at the areas that they were working on this year, but also at any areas that they may want to work on next year as well. And so the analysis has just begun at the school level.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Mr. Vernon?
I'll just make the comment that it was very interesting looking at the variations between, especially the elementary schools. There was some very big variations in data there. And I think there was one school in particular, I don't recall right off the top of my head which one it was, but there was one that just seemed like a lot of the numbers were significantly lower this year. I want to say it was Maple Street, but I'm not 100% positive. And I'm wondering if that is because of what happened, the transition with different principals this year.
And please note that in all this not the high school, because there are 4 years, but that's 25% turnover in students. The middle school and all the elementary schools only survey 3 years of students. The elementary is grade 3, 4, and 5, and of course the middle school is 6, 7, and 8. So we're talking a 33% change in your population, whereas your teachers stay the same. So that's a real good gauge. And I don't know how that plays in. I'm not a statistician, but it's very interesting.
Mrs. Bush?
I noticed on number 5 in the student survey, I feel I am in charge of what I learn. It went down, and I'm hoping that maybe the use of the blended learning would give them a little more control on what they learn and give them that feeling of being in control of what they learn and their choices.
We can comment on all kinds of things, so I'll just say that what stuck out was the new principal of the high school. I mean, those numbers were huge jumps. And the other thing that was, I know we always look at it, is students aren't feeling challenged. They don't feel a relevance to what they're learning, and they don't feel challenged. And it was nice to try to make everybody feel good, and we were focusing on, I feel welcomed in my school. I know that's important, but maybe it's time to start looking at some other, focusing on some other things, because that one comes up over and over and over. Students don't feel challenged, and they don't feel a relevance to what they're being taught. So, time to shift our focus, I think.
I agree with Michelle, but I also did want to commend Rockville High and BCMS for their huge gains. And I guess I would attribute it to the new administration, I'm not sure. But I think our new principal at Maple Street has a work cut out.
If I can add just one thing. I agree with Ms. Arn, and certainly that's an area that we do work on. Our requirement under the state is to have a parent, a focus on parents. And so what was that? And so looking at those, that was one that was low. The other one was communication. My school communicates with me. So those were 2 areas that we were looking at in terms of that, but that's just the reason. So I agree with you in the others, but that's a requirement for us, is to focus parents.
In general, too, I do think we had much better response from every group than we have in the past. So, okay. Anyone else have anything? All right, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 8.4, legislative updates. Dr. Vernon.
I'm just going to highlight a few of the pieces of legislation that affect us. You have the CABE advocacy highlights. You've received that before. On page 1, an act concerning youth athletics and concussions. This is requiring boards to implement a concussion at boards. By boards, we're the agents of the board, so that means that you don't have to do it, but we do. To implement concussion education plans, and also requires informed consent. So parents will need to give their signature authorizing participation and also awareness about the possibility of concussions. Coaches are also required to inform parents if the child has been removed from play for a possible concussion. So rather than just letting the child go home and tell parents, that's not. On page 2 at the bottom, an act concerning the storage and administration of epinephrine at public schools. This bill is requiring schools to designate and train non-medical employees to give epinephrine or EpiPens to students who have not previously been known to have allergies. So there's a couple of things. The school nurse cannot be available. And there are specific people, the principal, the coach, a teacher who's connected with the child. But there must be at least one other person who is trained during regular school hours in addition to the school nurse. The company that makes EpiPens, we have been informed, not but by word of mouth, we've been informed from the Superintendent's Association that they are going to present every school in the state of Connecticut with at least one EpiPen for the first year. And then we do have to renew them, and I'm not sure how long they last, but we do have to renew them after that, so that will be a cost to us. The next Public Act 1438 delays the common calendar for 1 year. We were supposed to have a sample this year that we could use, and next year we had to use it. It has now been delayed, and so we'll have a sample next year, 2015, and we will have to use it starting July 1, 2016. So for the 16-17 school year, we will have to use the regional calendar. We're not quite sure how that's going to work, but
Do local school districts have any input into that?
the 6 calendars are created by the Regional Educational Service Centers for the school districts in their area. So we are with CREC, so we would have the Hartford, or well, CREC is in Hartford, so it's not the Hartford calendar, but that's the one that we would have. On page 5, an act concerning school safety, and this is one that we're already in training for. Mr. Burt just went with a team to be trained by the state. We have to have a safe school climate plan into the department to be reviewed and approved. And so right now we have the bullying safe school climate plan. This will include more, more than that. Under minor revisions to the education statutes, it starts on the bottom of 5 and goes over to 6. Number 7, which we will be pleased with, is that parents must notify their home district if their child has been accepted or placed on the waiting list for a magnet school. So this will certainly help in planning. Number 11, not later than September 15, the superintendent shall report the status of teacher evaluations. That does not start until July 1, and so you will receive, under law, the report in June for Vernon this year, and then again in September, because it can change. The evaluation is supposed to be when state scores come in, that the evaluation can change by September 1st. Of course, this year there are no state scores, so they won't change, but I will be required to give you that same report again in September. If you wish me to put it on the consent agenda at that point, that would be just fine. An act concerning domestic violence and sexual assault on the bottom of page 6 requires us to provide safe teen dating violence education. That can be in a number of different ways, but we are to address teen dating violence. On page 12, an act concerning improving employment opportunities through education and ensuring safe school climates. This is concerning bullying again, and apparently there have been some schools that have brought the parents of the victim and the parents of the alleged bully in the same room with the students and had a very large meeting, and those, I'm guessing, have not gone well. That's not our practice. But this prohibits that. You have to have separate meetings as opposed to a combined meeting. On page 13, an act concerning a statewide sexual abuse and assault awareness. We need to have a sexual abuse and assault awareness prevention program. It will be developed for us, but we do need to implement this by October 1, 2015, so we have 1 year to prepare. An act concerning sudden cardiac arrest prevention starts on the bottom of page 13. This is requiring coaches of both intramural and interscholastic sports to annually review cardiac arrest awareness a program before beginning coaching assignments. And this is also, parents are going to have to sign off that they are informed about that when they're consenting to have their child be in sports. So there were several things in the update that I thought were pertinent to Vernon Public Schools, our students, and our practice. I thought you might be
Anybody have any questions or comments? I just noticed on page 4, they also are talking about changing the date for kids to go to school from December 31st, January 1st to October 1st. I know that's a couple of years down the road.
It is, and they have, it's a plan for that, so I don't know how far that's going to go. Anyway.
It's about time we talk about this. All right, anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Now, 8.5, Futures Report Priorities.
Thank you, and I'll ask Mrs. Buell still there? Yes, she is. Mrs. Buell to come to the table. In your folders this evening, you have the staffing one sheet. Looks like this. I have it in there in your folders. Looks like this. So, and that's where I'd like to start, if we may, this evening. And I'll explain the. We were asked about staffing in the Futures Report. There were several recommendations about staffing. And as much as we don't like what we have in front of us, and I'll tell you why in a moment, this is more or less what we feel is the best of all worlds right now, what we have. And so the director would continue in the 0.5 position. It's not what we want. I can assure you that in the budget for 15-16, you will find an additional 0.5 for the director and an additional 0.5 for human resources. At this point, we've come so far in human resources, we didn't know where we were, how far down we were. I can't imagine going without either position. And so it's not the best of all worlds going forward. We don't want to do that, but we don't really feel we have much of a choice except to try to get through another year and hopefully plan for the future where we have a 1.0 Director of Pupil Personnel and a 1.0 Human Resources Director. We have 2 supervisors. They're both part-time. One supervisor would be 0.5 as a special ed supervisor and 0.5 as the Director of Athletics. The other supervisor would be a 0.45 and a 0.55 in a teaching role, because we would be taking someone out of the teaching classroom, and in this way they would not be in the administrators union. They will still be in the teachers union, but they will be acting as an administrator 0.45 of the time. If it's 0.5, the way Vernon has done it would be that the practice has been that the person would be 100% in the union, and we don't have that. We don't have another 0.5 of an administrator. The out-of-district and SRBI is the 1.0, so that would continue. The responsibilities under each have changed drastically. And the last, the Vernon Elementary School principal would be 0.9 principal and 0.1 Office of Pupil Personnel Services. So I would start there. Some of the recommendations that were made were the IEP direct monitoring, so monitoring and certifying all the IEPs. Medicaid monitoring, that's a very key district-wide responsibility. And then you can see that as the principal, the person would be the principal, finalizing all IEPs K-5, and then the primary evaluator for those teachers that are in the Vernon Elementary School. The IEP Direct is a district-wide responsibility, and Medicaid is a district-wide responsibility. Moving right to left, the out-of-district, it would be all out-of-district PPTs except those with which we're already involved with the board's attorney or with any kind of mediation, and then the director would attend all 504 meetings, so you can see there's 60 plus of that, 70 out of district. Finalizing the IEPs for Next Step and West Main Learning Center. and providing oversight for those two programs, and then being the secondary evaluator would be a secondary evaluator for special education teachers district-wide, K-12, and including next step. So the next one would be a couple of out-of-districts, depending on, they could be new evaluations or they're very difficult ones, a secondary evaluator, and also running several of our special programs at the high school and the middle school. The supervisor of .5 would be elementary, and being a secondary evaluator. Again, the principals are primary evaluators, and you can see the programs there, and then the director would be really having oversight of those. If you look along the bottom of those boxes, you can see the number of IEPs that would be finalized by those people and the number of people that person would evaluate as a primary or a secondary evaluator. The reason we think we can do these things is that we would be looking at several things. One would be the creation of 2 more teacher leader positions. We have subject leaders at the middle school and the high school. In special education, we do not have any at the elementary or the pre-K. So those 2 positions are not in the budget right now, so we would be coming up with about $5,000 to have those 2 positions. There is still a little Alliance District money, so we would have to revise that. The building administrators would now conduct all annual and triennial manifestation hearings and most eligibility PPTs. So this is above what they attend many, but they're not conducting all of them, and they would be doing that. The other thing that we're doing is moving our mental health workers across the district. The mental health workers in the district have been working all year on a plan to see how we can provide an equity of services across the district based on need and population. And so you can see we would have 8 building-based, so at Center Road, a full-time psychologist, a full-time social worker. At Lake Street, a full-time psychologist. At Maple Street, a full-time psychologist and a full-time social worker. At Northeast and Skinner, half-time psychologists shared between the 2 buildings and a full-time social worker. That frees up 2 of our mental health professionals to have district-wide responsibilities. And those district-wide responsibilities would be the early childhood specialist, so that would be a homeschool connection. They would be meeting with all the birth to 3 families and helping those families acclimate, and also working with 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds as well in their families once they're here. And then the school family community liaison, that's also a homeschool connection, and that would be K-5, I think, K-5. And that's also would relieve some of our other mental health professionals in the district from doing that. So this is, we've been working on this for several months. Again, it's not where we want to be, but it is what we feel we can manage for the next year. And again, I would be asking to expand the director of both HR and the director of people personnel for the following year, 15-16. Mrs. Buell, did I leave anything out there?
I think you did a nice job. It seems you've covered all the bases. Thank you.
If you'd like to just keep going, explaining the rest. You've already seen the report, so not much has changed in this except that in the action plan matrix, they have been organized. So the first 4 are all the finance, and then the transportation and staffing and professional learning, I think, roles and responsibilities, professional learning, and response to intervention. And within each category, they have been prioritized, 1 through however many initiatives or categories, recommendations they are. The color boxes, the green boxes have been completed. The yellow boxes are in progress, and the red boxes just haven't been started yet. A white box is something that at this point we do not feel we're going to take any action on. You can see that even just looking at the front page, the top priority is completed, the second one is in yellow, the third one is in red, but the fourth one is completed because there is some low-hanging fruit that we were able to do right away. And so even though number 3 had a higher priority than number 4, number 4 was able to be taken care of immediately or in a more timely manner, so it wasn't less important, and that would be the way this is all the way through. So, Mr. Picaro and Mrs. Buell, any comments?
I see that you're going to be taking and putting two psychologists or a psychologist and a social worker at Maple Street School?
That's correct.
So you're gonna have one of each?
One of each, that's correct.
And you have 1.5 at Northeast and Skinner Road?
Correct.
So you'll have one social worker and half a psychologist, is that how it goes? Okay. And my only concern is that, the social workers and the psychologists form such a bond with the schools that I hate to split them between 2 schools because they're not always in the building then when you really need them. That's just one of my concerns, being in a situation where we only have part-time in my school for social worker and psychologist. And it always happens, the day they're not there or the time they're not there is when the crisis happens and the need is really great. So it just worries me that you're not going to have a full psychologist in each building. And I wish we can make that happen somehow. I think that's a very important position because the need at all 3 of these schools are huge, and that we need to make sure that we have that coverage for our students.
Continuing on with the theme, you have one early childhood specialist in homeschool for Center Road School, and a second one. Do you have that many homeschool children?
I'm sorry, the person's where their office will be at Center Road School, and the other person's where their office will be at Skinner Road School. It's just where their office is. That's their home school, I'm sorry.
But further to that, we have that many homeschool children that we require 2 personnel.
They're not dealing with homeschool children. We don't give any of our homeschool children any services whatsoever. I'm sorry, I made that incorrect. It's making the home to school connection for our families. I apologize, I was not clear. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Stanton.
So I'm going to ask the question based on priorities and based on the budget concerns that I had the last time around we discussed this. Do we feel, given the amount of money that we removed from the budget and the expected savings we were going to receive from taking action on this report, do we feel that we're in a good position and that we will realize the savings we were hoping to realize?
Through you, Madam Chair. I think the most direct way to answer that question is yes, but not through the original way that we were expecting. And let me explain that. Originally, I think we went into this eyes open thinking there would be enough low-hanging fruit to come up with a $50,000 savings. And while we've realized maybe a quarter or a third of that immediately with some of the transportation changes that we've already made as a result of the recommendations from the audit, I think the bigger savings here will be in the way we budgeted for next year. And so when I look at the budget from a financial lens, this year we're looking at about a $500,000 deficit projected in our special ed account, give or take, depending on how the numbers fall at the end of the year. But that's a big number. Last year it was bigger. Next year we're looking at projected of no deficit in those tuition line item accounts. So the answer is yes, and it's because of the way I think we're changing the way we're projecting our budget, the way we budgeted, and not having a deficit in our tuition accounts for special education next year.
I'm certainly in no position to disagree with Mr. Picaro, but I would read the report a little differently in that what I see is this report told us what we already knew anyway. And to be saving money in budgeting was the direction that Mr. Picaro was going anyway. So I think it's generous of him to suggest that we're going to save money because we're budgeting differently. We should have been doing that anyway. I think it's more about reorganization.
and a staffing plan, and I find this staffing plan extremely confusing. And you said right away, we're just going to use this to get through the year, and you're going to be looking for more personnel, so we're not saving any money at all. We're adding money to the budget. So what I get from this is the plan that was put together for reorganizing didn't work, just didn't work. And Futures told us it's not working and it should be done differently. And you're not doing that, you're just tweaking a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We're not saving any money. That report, the Futures is not being paid for, and we were assured that there would be about a $50,000 savings just by following the Futures plan. So I'm not impressed at all with the staffing plan that we were given, because I think it's very confusing and misleading. It feels like smoke and mirrors, quite honestly. I'd like to know exactly what the staffing plan is. I'd like to know, almost like an organizational chart in special ed only. I don't know who answers to whom and who's doing what. I wonder if the staff knows who reports to whom and who's doing what, because there's such a distribution of our responsibility here. And I think that Dr. Conway committed us to a Futures contract that we didn't know anything about. And then we were told that we would recognize the savings with it. And I think there were savings in transportation, and those were done right away. And I will repeat that I think that the savings that Mr. Vaccaro was very gracious in alluding to was something that we were doing anyway, because special ed budgeting for the last 4 or 5 years has been poor. And the way we've been able to take care of it is because there have been excesses in other places. And we haven't taken, the business office is taking care of that. Special ed isn't taking care of that. I think there's a lot in this report that's not being addressed, and again, I'm very disappointed with the response to the Futures report. The organizational plan didn't work, Dr. Conway, and Futures said it's not working, yet we're not doing anything about it and we're not realizing any savings. I would like to see a clearer staffing plan, and I'd like to see like an organizational chart. Who's doing what and who's responding to whom? Because it is very unclear to me. Some things that are marked complete had to do with paraprofessional supports. I'd like to know what those changes are, how these things have been determined that they're complete. Paraprofessional allocation for specialized programs. It was explored, but I wonder what the changes are, what the result of that exploration was. So some of these things that are marked complete it's simply you're telling us that it's complete. What has happened, what is happening, what will happen. Do we need a direction from the board? Can I ask for an organizational chart? Can I ask you to answer? Does that need to be in the form of a motion? Actually, I guess I'll do that. I move that the administration provide the board an organizational chart with regard to special education.
Is there a second?
An organizational chart would help make it clearer to me who's doing what and who's reporting to whom. Where's the overlap and where are the deficits?
Is there a discussion, questions on that motion? I think one of the things that Futures said is that we should have a separate human resources person and a separate special ed director, which was not going to save us money, obviously, because that's not what we had. So I don't think everything in the Futures report was meant to save us money. Some things definitely were. But some of their recommendations were to improve our whole special ed system. If I understand that correctly.
I don't disagree with that, but I keep alluding to a $25,000 commitment, and we were told that we would realize at least twice that, and I haven't seen anything like that. So I know that there are not, everything in there wasn't
All I'm saying is that I think we should look into having a full-time special ed director and full-time human resources. Unfortunately, we already cut like 5 out of our special ed administration, which I think is crippling this staffing program because they have so little to work with. I don't know, I mean, I don't know if there's any way they can find money in our current budget and move it elsewhere to give us some of the things that we need, but I think we're going to be crippling along next year to get through with the administration that we have in special ed. Mr. Stansel?
I'll remind the board that we did have a choice not to implement a full-time or a half administration position for the athletic director, but that was deemed more critical than the half for special education. I agree strongly with Michelle. I'm disappointed that the commitment was made and the promise was given to us that we were going to receive this financial relief. And if you implemented all the things that they say to implement, our costs are going to go up, not down. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It probably is good for the special education program, but there is certainly not enough cost relief in this report to make me think that we made a wise decision.
One of the things I have heard people stating fact about budgeting as a problem for special ed. The way I look at budgeting in the 12 years that I've been on the board for special ed, it's like predicting snowstorms. You know, the town fortunately has a general fund to fall back on, and they can go to that general fund pretty easily. The board does not have a general fund. We don't have the ability to fund or put a pot of money aside for when we have things happen to us. And, you know, I think board members need to remember that that's not, we have to budget based on what we know today, not what we think is going to happen tomorrow, because, again, we can't have that surplus. And if that was easy to do, then we would do it. I think I heard Mr. Macaro say we've learned some things from the information we received from this report as to how we might budget differently than we've done in the past. This is part of the learning process for dealing with something that is unpredictable. And I have to give them credit for trying to find ways to protect this board from those costs that we cannot predict. Because I would like to know how many snowstorms we're going to have next year. If you can tell me that, tell me the same thing for, we don't have a crystal ball. And that's the problem with special ed that I've seen for the whole time I've been on the board.
I think there's another way to look at that, Mr. Wolf, that we have not budgeted, special ed has not budgeted appropriately because they don't use actual costs. So I'm not looking for anybody to have a crystal ball, use what we know. And special ed has not used what we know. That's why we end up with a deficit every year. And we were fortunate in years past to have dollars in other places to make up for that deficit. And we don't anymore. So I don't think this report told the business office anything that they didn't already know, that we needed to be budgeting differently. And I think the business office was on their way to doing that, and along came the futures report and simply told them what they knew anyway. And special ed was the problem. It's not been budgeted correctly. And yes, there are surprises, and I think they would have us believe that that's the reason, that we can't predict and we can't know. But other towns don't end up in the spot that we end up because they budget differently. So we're finally, thanks to the business department, going to be budgeting differently and probably won't be facing the same issues that we faced the last 4 years with significant deficits. But I think that it can be looked at in another way, that we don't have to predict exact numbers coming and going, but we have to look at what we've actually done in the past and not guess. And that makes a better budget.
Anyone else? Okay, there is a motion on the floor to ask administration to provide an organizational chart in regards to special ed. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Anything else on the futures report here? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to discussion of Connecticut Association for Caves Lighthouse District Training Workshop. Anyone want to take a stab at what we did last week?
The key word we talked about was urgency, and to make sure that we realize where we are and the urgency to make sure that what we're doing is all appropriate for where we want our students to be. And I think that was the key word that we talked about. We used the book, Our Iceberg is Melting, and it is a cute way of really making us reflect a little more on making sure our practices are bringing us to where we want our students to be. And that's what I got out of the meeting. Continue.
Anyone else add to that? I think the bottom line is we talked about what we thought was one of our obstacles, and we seemed to come to consensus that we believe we need more community involvement from everyone in the community, parents, businesses, just the whole community. And we're hoping that if we were able to come up with a way to get them more involved, it would help to improve and they would be more invested in our educational system. So, if anyone else has anything to add? Mrs. Arnold?
Just that it was interesting that the next day we met with the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and that's the assistance that the board is looking for, is community outreach and partnerships and making a plan and actually help making a plan and then help executing a plan. But it was right on the heels of the exact same conversation we had at Lighthouse.
That's great. We look forward to hearing more about that as we get more involved. Okay, we'll move on to item 8.8, reports from Board of Ed liaisons regarding attendance at organization of committee meetings. Does anybody have anything to report? No? Nobody? Okay. Item 8.9, donation from the Vernon Education Foundation. Mr. Wolf.
I'd like to make the motion that the Vernon Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of $828 to be used by the Summer Academy Program to provide 2 buses for each of the 3 scheduled field trips during the summer instruction.
There's a second, Mrs. Bush.
Second.
I think we need to note that this donation is from the Vernon Education Foundation. So it's not in the motion, but
And I would amend it to my motion to thank the Vernon Education Foundation for that donation.
any other comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Item 9.0, to review an updated Board of Education calendar. Does anyone have anything for the calendar? Okay. 10.0, opportunity for questions from the press. Anybody here for the press? Okay, one last motion. Mrs. Bush.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Mr. Stansel. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.